Hello and welcome to the FatBoss Guide to Tectus in Highmaul.
And in this video we'll show you how to defeat Tectus on both normal and heroic difficulty because the mechanics are exactly the same, just in heroic, damage is slightly higher.
Now the boss consists of killing a giant mountain with legs, and when you do end up killing him, he splits into 2 smaller mountains with legs, and then they turn into 4 smaller mountains with legs each. So if you do the fight in a certain way, you end up with 8 bosses all doing the same mechanics as the first boss, and there are instant kill mechanics and very high damage dealing mechanics, and it can get a little bit crazy.
Now for this fight you do want to bring 2 tanks, in a 30-man comp you want to bring around 7, maybe 6 healers, and in a 10-man comp you want to bring 2 to 3 healers. As for DPS, melee and range are both fine, bring a mixture of both.
Now before we go jumping into the more prominent mechanics of the boss, there's one ability that you do need to be aware of, which is accretion. Now this is just a stacking 5% damage dealt buff that the boss applies to himself, and the only way of removing it is by dealing damage to the boss. So if for some reason you decide to be nice to the boss and not attack him for about a minute, he'll have a huge fucking damage increase. But the thing is, because you are dealing damage to him throughout the entire fight, it doesn't really come into play until later on, when there are more copies of him.
2 of his main abilities are circles that spawn underneath your feet that you need to avoid. The smaller circle is Fracture, and what this will do after a short amount of time, a pillar will come out of the ground and smack you right in the face, which will knock you up into the air. If you do get hit by this, it won't insta-kill you, but it does do quite a lot of damage, so try and avoid it. It's just annoying for your healers really, more than anything else. This ability tends to prefer to only target melee, however sometimes it does randomly appear on range. So everyone make sure that you're aware of what's underneath your feet, and you'll be fine.
Mainly because there's a giant scary pillar that's coming to insta-kill you called Earthen Pillar. Now this is a huge circle that only appears under players' feet that are spec'd as ranged DPS or healers. It won't happen to melee DPS unless there are no ranged or healers. This means that you can't have ranged or healers in melee range either because they can spawn there, and after a short cast it will pop out the ground, insta-kill anyone that's there, and then remain there for around a minute. And this also causes line of sight and you can't path through it either. So the idea is, move from both of the scary rocks.
Another ability that the boss will shoot out at your raid is something called Crystalline Barrage. Now what the boss will do, he'll target one random player ranged, and he'll send out a red cloud that chases them for 14 seconds. If anyone stood inside this red cloud, they'll take very, very, very high physical ticking damage, so it's very important that you do not stand inside it, and the person that it is chasing needs to kite it away so it doesn't go on the rest of the raid or themselves. Now it's important to note that the cloud actually originates from the very center of the boss. So melee, you need to make sure that you're not stood inside the boss's hitbox and you're not stood in the path between the boss and the ranged. With that ability in mind and Earthen Pillar in mind, it's a good idea to have your whole ranged and healers stacked up in one single location. When the Earthen Pillar comes in, the entire group moves left. If you get the Crystalline Barrage on yourself, you move over towards the right. And melee, you just want to position yourself so you're never in the path of the Crystalline Barrage.
So apart from making the whole encounter area somewhat more cleaner because you can determine where you want the Earthen Pillars and where you want the Crystalline Barrage, another benefit of staying together as a ranged group is so you can heal up a next ability, which is Tectonic Upheaval. Now once the boss will reach 100% energy, he will do large ticking damage to the raid over 12 seconds. After the cast is over, he will heal himself for around 20% of his maximum HP. Now the rate at which the boss gains energy is gauged by the percentage health that he is missing, so the lower health he is, the faster the energy regen, so the lower health he is, the more often he will cast Tectonic Upheaval. Now this works out fairly well because you can only kill the boss during Tectonic Upheaval, so if you don't manage to kill the boss during maybe the first upheaval and you've got like a couple % left over, he will quickly go back into another Tectonic Upheaval due to his low health pool and of course higher energy regen. Now while Tectus is only a single boss, you should be able to kill him in the first, and if not the second, Tectonic Upheaval.
And one thing to note for these Tectonic Upheavals, you should try and assign a healing cooldown for every single one, but if the boss is going to die within that Tectonic Upheaval, it's a complete waste to use a healing cooldown, because the boss won't die at the end of the cast, he'll just die as soon as he's on 0% health during a Tectonic Upheaval. Now while the boss is actually on his own, 2 adds also spawn. The first of which is the Night Twisted Berserker. This is a big ogre guy that looks scary, but really he's not too much of a problem. He only has one real ability, which is where he'll drop all his threat and just charge to a random target, and he'll deal any damage between his initial location and his final location. So if he does charge, you can try and avoid it, but really you don't really have much chance of avoiding it. You just take the damage and that's about it. So what the tank needs to do is make sure that they pick these up. They always spawn on the outside of the circle, and when they do come in, everyone just switch them and kill them as soon as you possibly can. However, there's another ad in play, which is called the Night Twisted Earth Wrapper, that is far more important to kill. He has an ability called Gift of Earth that will summon a projectile that will start firing towards the boss. If it does actually hit the boss, Tectus will gain 10 stacks of accretion, which is a 50% damage increase. Of course, these stacks can be removed by damaging him, but if the tank is low when this comes in and the boss does a very nasty melee hit with a 50% damage increase, it could potentially cause a wipe. Now, you can actually intercept this projectile, so if it does get his cast off, it's important that you do stand in the way, but if you do get hit by it, you'll have a debuff on you called Petrification, which reduces your movement speed, and it also makes it, if the boss hits you, you give him accretion stacks, which he would have got before, but you also heal him. So it's very, very important that if this cast does go through, tanks don't get hit by it, and if you do get hit by it, don't tank the boss until that stack has dropped. However, this is all completely irrelevant, really, because you can just stun the ad during the cast.
Exactly. The whole idea, the ad has very little health, and the Gift of Earth cast is about 1.5 seconds or so, and as soon as that comes in, you stun him. Everyone should be on this ad right now. All the range should be completely nuking down this small little Earth Wrapper bastard, and any melee DPS that can safely get to him as well should do, and you just completely destroy him. Just have a couple of people assigned, especially with long range stuns, maybe like a Rep Paladin with Fist of Justice, or anything else that you can do in order to stun this ad when the Gift of Earth comes in, and you have no problems at all.
One thing to note is that this ad also has a frontal cone ability, so tanks, when you do have him, make sure you are facing him away from the range and from the melee.
So as soon as you got Tectus to die during his tectonic upheaval, 2 new Tectuses will appear, and of course the ads will now stop spawning. If you do have any ads left over, finish them off and then start mucking about with the new Tectuses. Now, these 2 new bosses have the exact same mechanics as Tectus did, including all like insta-kill mechanics as well. However, they do very slightly less damage, so it's maybe a tiny bit more manageable, but really it's not too noticeable.
However, there is one new mechanic that is in play for the rest of the fight, is that if you have these 2 mobs next to each other, they'll actually give each other accretion stacks as well as stacking their own like they do normally, which means you kind of need to do damage to both if you do have them stacked together. And later on in the fight, when you have 4 or 5 or even 8 of them all next to each other, it's very important all of them take damage, because otherwise they're going to have too many stacks and the raid's going to wipe.
So still at this point, you want to maintain your composure and stay as a group. Keep going left for the Earthen Pillar and then right for the Crystalline Barrage, and then just generally slowly cleaving them down while focusing on a single ad. So just make sure that you maybe your Rogue's got Blade Flurry on and your Chimera shotting and all that kind of stuff, just to keep the cleave going, but you still do want to focus down a single ad because you don't really want 8 of them at once. It's best to have 4 of the new little bosses and then 1 of the old medium ones rather than 8 little ones that are going to completely and utterly destroy you.
So once you have cleaved off one and finally got one of them down, that 1 ad will now turn it into 4 ads, which means with the old one still alive, you have a total of 5. And this is where the fun starts, because you now have to deal with all the same mechanics again. You still need to do with the Earthen Pillar, the Crystalline Barrage, as well as having to manage all the accretion stacks on all of them. But you now need to do this 5 times. So when pillars come in, there'll be 5 pillars.
Yeah, it gets a bit hectic. It's so easy here to go in complete panic mode, every man for themselves, but try and once again maintain composure. You'll be absolutely fine. Try and stick together as a ranged group and move together, left for the Earthen Pillar, right for the Crystalline Barrage, and generally you want to try and kill 2 or 3 of these before their tectonic upheaval, because these smallest ads are the only ads that you can actually kill without them being in tectonic upheaval, and of course you really want to kill them before they go into that. So if you can get 2 or even 3 of them down, because at this point you need to pop Bloodlust to try and get these down as quickly as you possibly can, because there are 5 of them up. You want to kill as many as you possibly can. When tectonic upheaval does start coming in, you really need to start popping some raid cooldowns. Don't go too crazy, because of course you still have to have some for later on when you deal with the 4 other ones, but make sure you do use the correct healing cooldowns.
Once you've managed to kill the 4 little ones, you'll be left with the 1 medium one on his own. Yep. At this point you can take a breath, because it's exactly the same as it was start of the fight, except you don't have any ads to deal with. It's literally just the boss, and he's doing slightly less damage than he was before. So it's just him still on his own. If you really wanted to, you could wait for cooldowns. Wouldn't really recommend this, because the enrage timer, even though it is quite long, if you've already been this far into the encounter, you're probably heading towards the enrage timer. But what you should probably look at doing at this point is just taking a little breather and start taking the boss down slowly. When he does die and the 4 ads appear, you just need to blow them up, like you usually would, just cleave the shit out of them, kill them as quick as you possibly can, and that's it. That's the end of the fight. So essentially the whole fight is just about managing your positioning more than anything else, and making sure that you have enough cleave on all of the ads in order for everyone to survive. But thank you very much for watching, guys. If this video did help you out, then please do drop us down a like. It helps us out quite significantly. And if you'd like to see any of our other Highmaul guides, please do click up on the annotations you see on your screen now. It'll take you straight to those videos.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.